So for the study plans, what you want to do is think, are you cramming, meaning you have like less than a month to do to study for your exam, or do you have 1 or more months, 2 or more months? Those are the three options to pick from for this specific study plans. So if you're cramming, this is usually students who have less than a month. What I would recommend doing is making sure that you do this all at least a week before your exam, and then this 3 days before your exam. So a week before your exam, I would take a time practice test so you can practice like your timing strategy and just like getting a feel for the test in general at least once before you go into the exam. And you can find free copies of practice tests on the ACT website. They release one each year. They also have a bunch of books on their website with official exams. There's ones that are specific just to like the English sections, ones for just the science section. There's one that's like a big red book that's like, it comes with 6 or more practice tests depending on which version you get, which edition you get, that you can practice the whole entire exam. So I would recommend doing that. And then completing the corrections for the practice test, because it really doesn't matter if you just did the questions if you're not correcting them and learning from your mistakes. So that's important. And then 3 days before the exam, I would recommend doing the review test in this book, because the way that I wrote the review test is so that you can practice the most amount of skills in the least amount of time, to just be reminded of some common errors that a lot of students miss on the exam before you walk into that test. Now, I would study the chapter 15 grammar notes for 5 to 10 minutes each night. Now, the grammar notes, which I'll show you in another video, are basically like a cheat sheet, but they're just like a couple pages long. I think it's like 4 pages long or something, which it's basically like a summary of every single grammar rule that you need to know that's important. And I even like bolded the ones that are most important. So it basically has all of that except for like the very little minute rare things, like for instance, in the idioms, diction, and register chapter, there's a bunch of like phrases that you can memorize. It's like 100 or something phrases that you can memorize if you want, but the likelihood that you're going to remember all of those and that one of them will show up on the exam is very unlikely that that's going to happen. And it's more likely that it'll help you to focus on every single other grammar skill rather than that, because those are more likely to show up on the exam. So that's what the notes have, basically. Like the notes have what you need to definitely know to score, like get those really high scores, but maybe not a perfect score, because like you do have the chance of getting like that one little thing that's not on there, but you'll still do really well. Like you could still get like Ivy League scores without knowing that stuff. And most of that stuff you just have to like know from memory anyway, from like reading. And I find that students, it doesn't really help to memorize them. So let's keep going. That's basically what the grammar notes are. So that's why I recommend like looking at them periodically so you're memorizing those notes. Now, if you have the capacity for more, then I would start completing as many quizzes as possible and the corresponding corrections. So each of the chapters, well, almost every single chapter has a quiz associated with it. There's only like 1 or 2 chapters where I didn't put a quiz with it because it was just like you'll only get like 1 or 2 questions about it on the exam, and so I put it in the review test instead. But I still put examples of questions and I like walk you through it in the chapters. But all the other chapters have the walkthrough examples, like the notes and the examples, and then after they're followed up with quizzes that refer to the specific skills in that chapter that were taught. So I would go and do all those quizzes so that you can practice the skills in isolation and then like realize what you're bad at, what you might need more practice with, and what you need to study more. And yeah, so I would basically go and do that. And then I also wrote the quizzes to be efficient as possible, where I didn't want to give you like, even though like I could write like a 30 question quiz or something, I tried to keep the quizzes the length to a minimum for the quizzes, because the whole point of this is that you could be able to use this to cram or master. So I tried to limit it to like questions that test different skills that you're likely to miss, like different ways that they'll ask the questions, rather than giving you like 5 of the same way that they would ask a question, or like the same skill that they're testing, like the same thing that they want you to miss for that question. I tried to just do like 1 of each so that you can just kind of like quickly get through it and then start. Like if you want more, the best thing you could do is not like, even I couldn't write like the best practice test that you'll be able to get, because I'm not a creator of the exam. Like I don't work with the ACT and SAT to create the actual exam. So my practice test is not going to be as helpful as theirs would be. What I'm more helpful for and what this book is more helpful for is like practicing the content and the skills and teaching you those skills. But then you want to practice with the exact replicas of the exam, which is provided by the specific testing organization. So that's what I would recommend doing. And then if you have more time, I would recommend focusing on chapter 7, the punctuation chapter, and chapter 9, the agreement and context chapter, because those have the most amount of questions that like are associated with them, like in proportion to the entire exam. And these are the things that I find students miss the most, especially like punctuation. It's definitely the punctuation and agreement stuff, but punctuation for sure. Everyone always misses the comma rules. Like I've never had a student that didn't need to review that. So I would definitely do that. Now, that's the cramming. If you have about a month, to prepare for the exam, again, I would recommend focusing on chapter 7 punctuation, chapter 9, the agreement and context. And this is like a sample schedule where like you could do like 30 minutes every other day, working on a specific chapter, like, and working in order of the chapters in the book. I put the chapters in this order for a specific reason. I don't know why authors don't do that by like doing, like having it in order of like the number of questions that are associated with stuff on the exam and like the stuff that most students miss. Like that's what I did when I was ordering the concepts. I focused on, okay, how many of these questions are on the exam? Because those are going to go towards like the front of the book. Those are going to be the beginning chapters if there's more questions with that. And also I tried to focus on like, what do most students miss? So like I took both of those into account when ordering the chapters based off my experience as a tutor and like knowing the test. So what you would do is just like this is a sample week schedule. You can come up with your own. I just wanted to give a specific example. And then 1 week before the exam, it's the same exact thing I was saying before. Take a time practice test and do the corrections for that practice test. And then for 3 days before the exam, again, same thing. Complete the review test and do those corrections. And also I would be studying like the grammar notes periodically. I think I forgot to say that. Study the grammar notes 5 to 10 minutes each night before your exam, 3 days before, so you're being reminded of all those rules. And I would highly recommend getting the official practice guide with all the practice tests so that you could practice taking those tests. And then I would go, if you have 2 or more months, then I would still go in order. And I would do all of the chapters, but just make sure that you leave the chapter 17, the review test chapter, or I think now it's chapter 16. I think I have to fix that. That's a typo. Yes. It's actually chapter 16 now, the chapter 16 review test at the end of the book, because the whole point of that is that that test is for you to take 3 days before the exam to be quickly reminded and like refreshed on all of these skills that you're most likely to see on the exam. So I would hold off on that until 3 days before the exam, which I put like down here, like 3 days before your exam, take that review test and do the corrections, and then study your grammar notes in chapter 15. And then here's a sample weekly schedule. I did 2 different ones, one for the first month and one for the second month, because this is like you have 2 or more months. So for month 1, I would do like, it's pretty similar to the first one where you're just doing for the 1 month plan where you're just doing like every other day, try to do 30 minutes working on a specific chapter to just kind of get through the book and spending time studying the grammar notes. And then once you're done with the book, that'll be like around month 2. And then what you should do then is then take a time to practice test, and then you can't like start doing the time practice test because you've already gone through this book except for the review test, and start taking like at least 1 practice test per week and doing the corrections. I would try to do maybe 2 if you can manage it. Again, you can find a bunch of practice tests on the official ACT website. Like they sell the books and stuff. They also have like, I think they release like only one free test each year. So like you could get the free one there too as well. There's people that make them for free online, but like I said, like really nothing can compare, no matter like how good of a writer you are or how good of a test maker you are. Like nothing's going to compare to like the actual thing. So I would highly, highly recommend getting that book. And yeah, like I said, 3 days before, do the review test, complete those corrections, and study the chapter 15 grammar notes for like 5 to 10 minutes each night before. And that is it.